Welcome to the BuiltOnAir podcast, the variety show for all things Airtable. In each episode, we cover 4 different segments. It's always fresh and different, and lots of fun while you get the insider info on all things Airtable. Our hosts and guests are some of the most senior experts in the Airtable community. Join us live each week on our YouTube channel every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, and join our active community at BuiltOnAir.com. Before we begin, a word from our sponsor, On2Air Backups. On2Air Backups provides automated Airtable backups to your cloud storage for secure and reliable data protection. Prevent data loss and set up a secure Airtable backup system with On2Air Backups at On2Air.com. As one customer, Sarah, said, having automated Airtable backups has freed up hours of my time every other week and the fear of losing anything. Longtime customer David states, On2Air Backups might be the most critical piece of the puzzle to guard against unforeseeable disaster. It's easy to set up, and it just works. Join Sarah, David, and hundreds more Airtable users like you to protect your Airtable data with On2Air Backups. Sign up today with promo code BuiltOnAir for a 10% discount. Check them out at On2Air.com. And now let's check out today's episode and see what we built on air.
All right, welcome back. We are back with a new season 19, episode 1. Good to be back with everybody on the Built on Air podcast. Myself, Dan Fillers, Camille Parks, and Alli regulars with us. And we have with us special guest Silver Taza. Welcome, Silver.
Hi.
Good to have you on the show. We're going to learn more about Silver and his background coming up later in the show. I'll walk us through what we're going to be doing. We have an hour to share with you all the latest and greatest of what's going on in the world of Airtable. We'll start with our Around the Bases, covering any updates and news in the different communities. Then we'll talk about On2Air Backups, our sponsor. Then we will learn about Silver and his background and what he is up to. And then Silver's going to share his application, URL Shortener. And then a quick shout out to join our community at Built on Air. And then finally, Alli is going to walk through some new updates with formulas and how to format them. Okay. Round the bases. Okay, we've been off for a month. So lots of new feature announcements that we'll talk about. Before the feature announcements, they did launch their Airtable Academy. So if you are looking to learn more about Airtable, they've got different programs depending on what you're trying to do and featured courses and things like that. So you can get certified going through this and everything. So this is a new launch that I assume will get more and more attention over time. So I believe, Camille, you've spent some time in here.
I did none of the lessons and went straight to the certification. Which I received. I should go through and just watch a couple of the videos just so that I could, see how helpful they are as opposed to some of the older helper material that Airtable has released in the past. Of course, they had a YouTube channel where they used to do brief tutorials for many pieces of product, their support articles, etc. So it would be good from my perspective if I knew just how in-depth these courses are in comparison to some of their other options.
Yep. So, yeah, there's a Airtable Builder certification available. All right, let's talk about new features that have come out in the last since our last show. So it looks like we've got 4 that they've posted on their updates. There's actually more that we'll talk about, but let's go through and. We won't talk too much about other than just address. This is the one that Alli's going to walk through in deep dive. But essentially, it allows you to format formula fields as if they look like a single select field. So you can have coloring and kind of the pill format. Mm-hmm. So that is cool. There's a couple of nuances you need to be aware about. So that's what Alli's going to show us on how to use that one. So that's one. Let's see what else we got. Kanban view refresh. Actually, I don't know if I even noticed this. You guys notice?
I think I noticed it the day it was launched, but the day it was launched, I was like, how long has it looked like this? Because I so rarely use the Kanban view.
Yeah.
It looks more like some of the newer pieces of the product. So there's design parity in there, which is nice. If you have it as part of like a detail page, it blends in better with the page. And it also fixed one of the annoyances I had with detail pages in the sizing of Kanban sections was so short and it was unchangeable, unlike some of the other options that they had. And this design kind of fixed that oversight. So not a whole lot of new features, but it did fix this very particular annoyance I had.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like it just kind of got rid of the borders, cleaned it up a bit, more white space.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, no new functionality there. Sort in automations. So this introduces the ability to sort lists of records found via find record actions directly within automations, enhancing the consistency and sophistication of automation outputs.
This is a good one.
It's a very simple one, but it is very good. There's a lot of times where I need to pass a list of record IDs immediately into another script, and previously I had to query the whole table again so I could sort my list in a particular way, but now I don't have to do that. It feels like a minor change that adds it makes a lot of things easier.
Yep, absolutely. There's a couple, I guess, downsides to it, which are that the next one we were going to talk about is the increased find record limits. So you could only find 100 records at a time. Now you can find up to 1,000, but this sort will only work on the result of that find record step. So if you need to sort the records to find, if you have more than 1,000 records and need to get like the top 1,000, for example, this is not going to help with that because you can only sort after you've found the records. So there's no way to sort it and then pull the top 1,000 or top however many you need. And then the other downside is that you can sort by multiple fields, but you can only pick one direction for all of those fields. So if you need to sort by status in ascending direction and then by due date in descending direction, that's not possible right now. It all has to be one direction. Other than that, very happy with this.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, you wonder, let's talk about this one. Yeah, increased find record limits. So it went from 100 up to 1,000.
Really good.
This is very useful. I made use of it practically immediately. There were so many times where I knew for a fact I needed to find 104 records and I couldn't do it. So this is very useful. I will say an annoyance I have is that if you are querying a table with a script using table.selectRecords async and you want to pass it specific record IDs, the limit for that is still 100. So what I used to do all the time was use a find record step to do all of my filtering, and then I needed to do some complex process or whatever. So I would still need a script, but I would pass in the record IDs, and that makes the script run faster because the script has a script timeout. Well, I can still do that if I cap the limit at 100. You can manually set the find records limit's maximum. It could be 1, it could be 100, it could be 1,000, it could be whatever up to 1,000. But if you want to pass it record IDs into a query after that, you have to query the entire table and then filter it down afterward, which seems silly. Yeah. Undoubtedly, it would take longer to do that, but that's the only way to do it.
Agreed.
Interesting. Yeah, this still presents issues, especially you wonder if somebody said, hey, we need sorting and automation finds, and they're like, okay, they implemented it, but you really need it in this step when you're actually finding it. They really need to be able to add sorting as part of this, because then you know, like I just need the top 1,000 in this, sort. Yeah.
Exactly. I was just going to double down that the find record and the sort record are two separate action types. They are completely separate from each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe they're working on that. But you can, well, I don't know why you would if I was, never mind. All right, so those are all the new features that they announced. We'll talk a little bit about some other ones. Here's the article talking about the new single select output formatting. Okay, going into the Airtable community, if you want to see more discussion on these new features, a lot of these are highlighted first in the BuiltOnAir community and good discussion talking about this. So yeah, converting a single select, maybe we'll talk about this, Alli. It will break your interfaces. So something about that. Jen says, sneaking out of field will break your interface.
It's so true.
Yeah. Okay, next one. Okay, here's one that came out that it doesn't look like they announced this in their list, but the is within custom range. Can't remember. We might have talked about this on our last show.
I think we did, because I have this vague memory of Airtable announcing something to do with compound date filters, but it being phrased in such a way that I had no idea what they were talking about. I think this is the thing they were talking about.
Yeah, I think this was, although Scott found it within the last time we last spoke. So that's a cool feature. So if you want to filter within a range, but it has to be exact range, unfortunately. So you have to set the specific dates. That's one. What else we got here? So here's another one. Showing forms on the base menu navigation.
I've seen people share screenshots of this, but it's not live on any of my accounts yet.
I don't have it either.
Yeah, might be doing some A/B testing there.
Maybe. Oh, I see.
I like that it's there, because it's so hard to find new forms. You have to go to interfaces first and then go down to the forms section. But it's like hidden. It's not nearly as discoverable as I would like it to be. So if they go forward with this navigation option, it works for me.
Yeah.
Certainly.
That'd be interesting, though, if they kind of make forms be first-class citizens and add more functionality there.
Could always use more form functionality, that's for sure.
There are certainly some form features that I think are missing. So if they seem to be investing in forms in the same way they're investing in Interface Designer, in that forms were nested under Interface anyway. There's the same engine that powers both of them in terms of at least dragging and dropping, like the design engine on top of it. So maybe they're going to add more than what we've seen in the past few months. Not sure what they would add, but I have a lot of suggestions.
Yeah.
All right, here's one. I'm not 100% sure on this one, but Max, who's actually going to be on the show next week, says in dashboard page, groups allow for multiple data sources on same page. Is that new?
No.
I don't think so. It's just not very obvious.
It's not obvious at all, because most people, I think the inclination is just to build in that first group that you start with. Or you might not start with any groups. You might have to manually create your own. But a lot of people will want to have, two charts representing two different table sources. And that's not something you could do. And I think immediately what someone might think is, oh, a dashboard is for one table element. It is at the group level, but there's not there is that separation that makes it a little less clear. And a lot of times, I think a lot of people want to have those things side by side.
Yeah.
I get it why you can't do that, because having a single source per group allows the filter components at the top to control everything inside it. So like, I think they probably weighed the pros and cons, but personally, I would like to be able to mix and match. I would like to have multiple sources, and per element, if I could pick which source each filter is targeting, then that would be great.
Yeah, that's how the original dashboard and the current still blank layout and even the record summary layout, that's still how those function. But the filter element is, in my opinion, quite clunky looking and not easy to really use. But I love that. I mean, like you said, Camille, like there's pros and cons. Like I like being able to point that filter element at just a subset of the elements that I've chosen. But it was also very confusing and not very intuitive to figure out how to do that for like a beginner user, I guess, if that makes sense. But yeah, there's plenty of situations where I'd love to be able to show like a chart of everything and then have a chart next to it that's filterable, or for example. I mean,
right.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't want it to filter. You're right, Alli. Wait a minute.
Exactly.
I didn't even think of that.
Right. Yeah. Like I want to keep like, so they can compare one specific subset to the total, like as an example. But yeah, there's pros and cons, ups and downs.
That's where I've been building interfaces recently, and I keep defaulting to the blank canvas because of that more flexibility there.
Yeah.
More so than the dashboard. But this is good because when you create a new dashboard, you don't specifically define the initial group, right? That's created by default. So I think people don't realize that there even is a group.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, next one. So here's more kind of a discussion on charting problems. We've talked a lot about charting, looking for a solution. I'm plotting two different fields on the same chart. Russell gives a good workaround to be able to do something like this. Not quite what Brian was hoping for. And then Russell suggests no loco as an option that does have that multi-series charting.
Yeah. There's a lot more advanced functionality that Airtable could add to their charts. This specific thing kind of makes me think of a demo I did long ago on the show. I'm not sure exactly when, but if you have the ability to have multi-source synced tables, depending on your plan, you can kind of hack together a chart if you sync the same data multiple times to a new table, and it all ends up in one column because you can point fields to the same columns. I use that trick quite often to get more advanced looking charts and have two different fields compared in the same like line chart, for example.
Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting one. So, okay.
I think we lost Dan for a second.
No, it's the first episode.
I know.
What do we do? He's controlling the screen.
Yes. Oh my goodness. We could talk real quick about there was they also increased or added functionality to the dynamic filtering to allow for other field types like single select, roll-ups, formulas, text. So that's exciting.
That's a big one. I'm surprised that they didn't put that on their What's New page. They might have put it on the community, but yeah, that's huge. The fields that you were hoping for are probably there now.
Exactly. Yeah, the only thing to note about the single select field, I was helping a client with this yesterday, and I was like, why is this not working? Like, this should work. And then I looked more into it. And if you're using single select fields on two different tables, they have to have exactly the same options, which is interesting. I'm not really sure like why they made that decision. Like I could see use cases where you wouldn't need to do that. But I mean, I typically, I wouldn't recommend even using single selects for that purpose, because I would just at that point recommend using a linked record field. So your options are still always the same between the two tables. But yeah, that's important to note, is the single select field must be the same on both tables. Other than that, though, really excited.
Along those lines, I've been noticing more and more in automations. If you were to say, let's say you have a find record step and you're looking for single select is, and then you have a dynamic value. If that is not a possible value that you fed it, the automation will error rather than just come with no value. I wish it didn't do that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You would
Sorry about that. I'm back.
Yay.
All right. Thanks for continuing that. Ready to move on?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Sorry about that. Internet dropped. Okay, a couple, if you like hearing what's going on in Airtable, executives, Howie's been making the rounds on several podcasts as well as others at Airtable. So they're really pushing their new AI functionality. So they're going around talking a lot about the new AI features in Airtable. So several podcasts, we'll put the links to those if you want to listen to Howie, also other executives at Airtable. Anthony Maggio, who's head of product, talking about their AI. And I believe one more, another one with AWS and Airtable, harnessing AI in marketing. So some good stuff there. Airtable is also hiring. If you're a solutions consultant or architecture solutions and engineer, looks like they have several openings. So if you'd love to work for Airtable itself, you can apply there. Check them out. And here's an interesting one on LinkedIn. I guess a phishing attack using Airtable. So hackers are fans of Airtable. This person got an email that had a link going to a shared view, and in that shared view they made it look like it was OneDrive, and it had some links to files, and those links were had malware on them. So be careful if you're seeing shady emails that link to Airtable may be unsafe.
Interesting.
And here's one more. We always like to look at competitors to Airtable. Here's an interesting one we saw on somebody posted on X, and it's Auto. So it's basically the AI functionality with Airtable, or with a table with different field types. So if you're really looking for specializing in AI, this could be an interesting one. I haven't played with it, but another one out there. We're doing stuff you could also kind of do, I think, similar to this inside of Airtable now with their new feature.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, one more shout out for Dartable. I believe they extended their early rate for a couple more weeks. I got an email on that yesterday, so I believe you can still get the early bird rate for a couple more weeks. So shout out to our friends at Dartable. And the email also alluded to some big announcements coming. So be curious to hear about that. And are both of you are presenting? Camille?
Yes, we're required by law.
Yes. Very good. So the podcast will be well represented in presenters there.
Looking forward to it.
Yep. All right, let's end with a little bit of humor. This is when the Webflow form to Airtable record update to automated Gmail response app works perfectly. That's when everything comes together. When you've got all these pieces tied together, it works in perfect harmony like this GIF.
Sometimes it really does feel like that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Hit this target that's always moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially sometimes the tools make you have to go the long way when it would have been easier just to hit the ball directly. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
All right, that concludes our Round the Bases. We'll move on. Give a quick shout out to OntoAir Backups. If you are using Airtable to run your business, best practice is to make sure your data is backed up outside of Airtable. And that's where OntoAir comes in. It backs up your data to Box, Dropbox, or Google Drive, and backs up all your data, your attachments, as well as your schema, including your formula fields, your formulas, and everything at the schema level. So check it out at ontoair.com. I'll give a quick insight. We are getting close to launching the ability to restore your backups back into Airtable. That's the top-rated feature we've been asked for, and that is going into Q&A this week. So hopefully a couple of weeks that will be going live. So excited for that. All right, Silver, good to have you with us. I'm going to turn it over to Camille to ask you a few questions.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Should I do a quick intro, or are we going questions first?
Tell me about yourself.
Right. So my name is Silver Taza, and that's actually my real name, not a fake one. I'm from Estonia, but I've also lived in the UK, in Scotland, in Singapore, Switzerland, and last year I lived in Canada. So that's why I don't have this pure Estonian accent here. I've been a software engineer for about a decade, and I've worked at Microsoft, some web development shops, in e-commerce, and also in a large SaaS startup. So my true calling actually isn't software engineering per se, but actually entrepreneurship. So this is why I have this small title here, Micro SaaS Founder. I can tell you a bit what that means. It's SaaS is software, software as a service, right? And micro SaaS is basically a tinier version of that. And usually what makes it micro is the fact that some aspects of building businesses are already solved by the platform on where you build this. And basically, hence why I'm here. So how I started here is I started on the Rob Walling's stair-step approach to building bootstrapped businesses. Rob Walling is like a quite known guy in the SaaS space, and I've been following his steps, so to say. And for this, I started out with Shopify. I tried building a couple of apps on there first, but found it to be too saturated and really hard to market what you're doing there. And building there wasn't the most pleasant experience. So what I did next was I did a more thorough analysis on all different these types of marketplaces where people build apps and often also ask like subscription fees for them if they provide value to the end users. And so the platforms that came on top were Airtable, Notion, and Monday that actually had some sort of an upward trajectory, and almost all other platforms that I would be great building on, they seemed either plateaued or dying. So why I chose Airtable, it just felt right to me. And I also had used it briefly in the last company I worked at. So I felt like it could be a good start. And as far as I read the forums on the Airtable community, I actually like the community here. And it's like night and day compared to what's going on Shopify. So I'm really happy to be here. Yeah, and how I got to the apps that I'm at right now. Initially, I started researching what what's missing in the Airtable marketplace. And I couldn't find, well, I was initially on the free tier myself, and I couldn't find any like proper GPT wrappers or like AI solutions. So I actually started building a like more decent GPT wrapper, as a lot of engineers tend to do, because it's a cool new technology, right? So I did most of the work and then realized that actually Airtable is doing it themselves. And then I completely dropped the project and started looking for a new solution. So I was perusing through what happens on Google Workspaces and what solutions are there for Sheets, because Google Sheets and Airtable has a lot of similar functionalities, even though they do serve different markets. And I also found that an URL shortener is missing from Airtable. And since it's like a common system design interview question when you're a software engineer, then I thought, hey, this will be a quick thing to build. So this is basically why I did that. But of course, everything is much harder than it initially looks. And it took quite a bit of time, but now it's out there, and I'm really happy how it looks and how it functions. And also, so far, I think it's been out about 3 weeks. I have 54 customers so far, or like 54 installs. So okay. I'm happy that people are finding this as well.
I do want to say it is a formative shared experience to build something for the Airtable marketplace, and then Airtable drops a feature that does the same thing, like in the middle of development.
Yeah, it's called platform risk, and whenever you're building anything on top of another platform, another product, then it's a major risk of control for any entrepreneur, really. But yeah, it's still a good place to start.
Yeah, I love the looking through what's already out there and identifying what you can add to the community. And I'm glad to hear that we're a little more welcoming, or at least less dire than perhaps Shopify's community might be.
Yeah, and not just the community. Actually, building an app on Airtable is so much better. It allows you to actually do things you want to do. With Shopify, it's so strict the way you can actually modify anything. Even though Airtable also has very few things you can actually do to modify the table and data itself, then what you can do in the interface is quite free.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had first learned React by doing a hackathon for Airtable's marketplace ecosystem just before it came into its maturity. And I found it easy enough to learn, obviously, that I did it. But it was a nice sort of experience, having freedom to do a lot and then having to reel yourself back in, like, what should I do?
Yeah. Still, I think for a lot of new engineers, when they want to build something on top of Airtable, then they'll most likely get stuck with OAuth, though, if they want to do any authentication on top of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's the first thing I got stuck on.
Yeah.
I
So
read your blog post on your website talking about how you looked at the different platforms. I thought that was pretty interesting approach to kind of take like a data-driven approach to what marketplace to go after.
Yeah, it's somewhat of a disease of mine. It's really hard not being over analytical about everything, but sometimes
I'm sure it helps.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
So you said Notion and Monday were the other two sort of ecosystems that you were looking into. I would have thought Coda. Monday is surprising to me.
Actually, I haven't heard of Coda. Monday, I don't know. It has just been around the like sphere of information that I'm in. But yeah, Monday has has a lot of apps already as well for its size. And I think Airtable doesn't have enough apps for its size. So in that sense, Airtable is a much better opportunity. Notion is great for its barrier to entry, because if you build something, then you can more focus on serving your customers and less on the competition if you are admitted to the marketplace. But it's really hard to get into the marketplace in the first place. That's the thing with barriers to entry.
Gotcha.
So how would you describe your experience getting into the marketplace for Airtable? For those who are less familiar with the developer ecosystem, anyone can make their own custom extension and use it for their own purposes. But to get into the marketplace, there is a submission process where there's a code review, and oftentimes that there's feedback before it actually makes its way onto.
Yeah, the good thing about the Shopify experience was that they trained me really well to do really good submissions, because they were very strict about it. So I actually got through with my first submission to the marketplace. The point is to just gather a lot of data and help the testers to do their thing. I guess the most annoying part was that you don't really get a lot of information after you've submitted it. And I waited for 3 weeks without a response. But then finally they reviewed it. And once it was reviewed, I actually had a much tighter communication with the reviewer after that. So I'm at least glad for that.
Yeah, that seems about right from my more recent experience. There is that delay before you're, I guess, in the queue for reviewing things. And after launch, wish there was a little bit more data analytics that's provided out of the box for, number of installs, etc.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Any analytics, please.
Yeah. There used to be, this might have been before you had started developing, but they did used to send you personalized information about here's how many installs and unique users, etc.
Even the reviewer asked me how I even know how many installs I have. I had to explain to him how I do that, which is funny.
Mm-hmm. It's something I wish I added to some of my apps and then elected not to. But yeah, that I love hearing other people's experience joining into the more developer side of the ecosystem for Airtable, because that's, holds a special place in my heart, being in the marketplace myself. I do want to take a look at the app that you have built.
Sure. Yeah, let me do a quick transition here. Okay, yeah, so Silva's going to showcase an app called URL Shortener. There's your screen. Yeah. There you go.
So you're seeing the screen, the marketplace. Yes. Okay. This is how the listing looks like. The logo here, I made it animated and all. I'm very happy about that. Yeah, and
yours is probably the only animated icon.
Nope, it's the second one.
Okay.
For a second, I thought the link expanded when you hovered over it, and I was like, how did you do that? But it was just fortuitous timing.
Well, they do sort of when you click on the link and you're on the view tab, then it shows the shortened link here on the right. I
meant the animated logo. But this is really cool. I love a good, clean interface, and I'm already very pleased with what I see here.
So I'll show the basic workflow. So you just select a couple of URLs that you want to shorten, and then you pick a destination field for this. With the next release, I'll make it more convenient, so it basically does some really good guesses here, so you don't have to click it yourself. And just click on shorten URLs. Yeah, and you have the small summary under here that shows what it did. There's also some copy to clipboard, show easy to copy view, so you can just select these and copy them yourself if you're the sort of person. And it also put them in the short link column here. And if you want, you can also add short notes to these when this short link expires, or also give it a custom slug. So you can just do like bez.e/campaign1 or anything you like. But this is the basic functionality where it generates you a unique link. And once you're done with these, you can view all of your created links. I have this here, and this has all the information about the short link you just created. There's also a QR code here for copying or downloading, especially when you're on the mobile phone, then you might find use cases for this. Usually QR codes and short links go together, even though I'm not super familiar with the use case here. I also track the links to these short links, which is good for anything marketing related. So you can see the different clicks that have been done with these with this short link. So whenever someone clicks on it, it saves it and shows where it's from as accurate as it can. This is from a public database. So So it's not like super specific, but usually you still get the you still get the city, but sometimes it's just the country. It's still a good thing to understand where your customers are coming from if you use it for this sort of a purpose. And then there are just settings where you can give me feedback, which I really, really like. Yeah, that's about it.
What service does it use for the shortener?
I had to build my own shortener because I couldn't reuse other shorteners because they're way too expensive. So I would have had to like transition these costs to my users. It's just a basic URL shortener service. Yeah, it doesn't do anything super magical. Why I used the bez.e is that it means meringue in Estonian. So it seemed cool.
Nice. Very cool. Okay, so I was going to ask, like, did you require them to enter their own API key for the shortener, or so you built your own, so there isn't the additional cost?
Yeah, a person did ask me whether they could use their own domain, but that's quite out of scope right now. With the
You're so casual about it. Just I built my own URL shortener.
I'm only casual about this because it is just a basic software system design interview question. It's like something a lot of people know. What did I want to say? The very first customers that I had, the very first installs were pretty funny. The very first install that I had, immediately after signing in, they did 1,000 URLs, and the very next one did 5,000. And I was really surprised that it actually worked and nothing failed here. Even though for the free tier, I've currently limited to 100 URLs, but if you do it in a batch, you can go over it as much as you want right now. But soon I'll fix that, I think.
Gotcha. Very cool. So there's a free tier and then a paid tier for more.
It's just because serving these short URLs with analytics will eventually wear on the server, so it has to be somewhat limited. I don't know if 100 is the correct number, but I checked other URL shorteners and it seemed like a good idea.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Well, let's hope that the need is there and more people use it up. I'm also in the marketplace, and I hope that Airtable promotes the marketplace more and makes it part of their strategy. They tend to de-emphasize it to their detriment, I believe. So.
Yeah, right now my main goal with this is to get a few people that actually talk to me about what they want out of this, so I can build it for them for free.
Yep.
Basically for free.
Yep.
For
Very
free.
Cool. Well, he'll incorporate it into the paid.
Yeah, eventually.
There you go.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome, Silver. Really appreciate you coming on and showing that.
My pleasure.
Yep. So they can check it out, find it in the marketplace. You also have your website, silvertaza.com.
Exactly.
And,
yeah, I've also wrote about the tech stack and what you need to actually build an Airtable app if anyone's interested.
Yeah. You have a great name. You also, your name could be a great company name as well. Silver Taza. That's a great product name as well.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. If you are not in the BuiltOnAir community, you need to join today. BuiltOnAir.com/join gets you in and gets you access to amazing discussions and people all doing amazing things in BuiltOnAir. Join us, BuiltOnAir.com/join. I will also give a shout out. We've changed the format of our newsletter. So if you haven't subscribed to the newsletter, you need to subscribe to that as well. You can do that on the BuiltOnAir.com/join. And that will get you in. We have updated newsletter. We're broadening it a little bit outside of Airtable as there are other products that are tangential and keep you up to date on everything. So great work being done there on the newsletter as well. So be sure to subscribe and look for that. Hey, Alli, let's learn more about the new formulas.
All right. This is something I am extremely excited about, and I've been trying to work it into various projects. There's some caveats that we will talk about. So there is a new option for formula fields so that if you have a text output, so for an example, here's a formula that has a text output. You can change it to be displayed like a single select field. And so what I'm showing right now is something I did a demo on long ago on the show before this feature was available, where I would often have a formula field that has something output. So in this example, I've got table of opportunities, and then I've got this aging status field where I'm saying, all right, how old is it? Like just comparing how many weeks aging each opportunity is and saying, all right, if it's not closed, like just say if it's getting old, getting older, if it's in danger, etc. And I would have a formula field next to that that's basically comparing the value of this single select field to the value of this formula. And if something changes, like if I take this close date and move it to June, now this runs an automation that takes this value and inputs it into the actual single select. And that gives a lot more flexibility because when you go to filter by that field, as an example, 1+ is that now I can filter with a drop down, whereas previously if I didn't have that, I would have to remember what the values are and actually type that into the field in order to filter by the formula field. You can also set it up with colors and all this fun stuff. So that's the process I had been using, which worked well, but also uses up automations and things can potentially get stuck. So I am very excited about the ability to use this new feature. So the new feature is, I'm just going to duplicate this formula field and we will look at it. So I've got fancy formula all set up. It's just returning different values depending on an actual status field, and then also then looking at the weeks that this opportunity has been aging. But now if I go to the formatting tab, this is the new feature where we have this new toggle and we can change the output to single select options. So if I turn that on, it's going to give me a screen that looks like this, where it automatically loads in an option called default. And this is one of the weird little caveats to pay attention to, which is you need to manually enter in all of the possible options that formula might return in order to have this work the way that you would want it to work. And if the output of the formula does not match any of these predefined options, you can have the ability to choose something to display. So I'll kind of demonstrate what that looks like in a moment here. So what I've been doing is I'll just go and copy the values that I know are going to be returned by this formula and go in here and just add them. And then you can select colors. It's good to actually copy it, especially if you've got like emojis or anything, because it needs to match exactly what the formula is going to be returning in order for it to work. So if I just throw in a few here, we'll go down to this, our getting old option. One thing that's really bothering me is flipping between the formatting and the formula. It makes that window smaller every time. I'm like, really? Did they not get this in their testing? Would have been nice. But we'll throw in danger. And then finally, too old. And actually, I've got that color already. Okay, so now when I hit save, what's really awesome is this is gonna, it looks exactly the same, except for I chose the wrong color for one of them. But now if I go and change some dates in here to something else, this is gonna update automatically, whereas this had to wait for an automation to run. And this is just going to change immediately to those values. So if I had accidentally, like, let's say I didn't put a space here, right, for getting old. And then I hit save. Now you notice that option that should say getting old is default. And that's because the returned value of the formula does not have a space, and my options that I've predefined does have a space there. So you need to make sure they match exactly. And then if they don't, you can, and sometimes this might be something that, you know, works for your use case. Like you might actually want this to happen. You could put in unknown instead of the word default. You could really choose whatever you'd like. Or you could remove that option altogether and have it just return blank if it doesn't match any of the options. So now this would just say nothing. So really important to like make sure you've got all the options in there that you could potentially have. Otherwise, you're going to end up with some blank fields or, you know, just that default value. Another caveat to mention is you'll notice I duplicated my formula field and I did it all in this duplicate. What I've found to be the easiest process is to actually create a brand new field and set it up and then go and find all of your dependent options that are looking at your old field and repoint them. Otherwise, if you don't, if I had just done this, if I changed my formula field here to that single select, or even if I changed the single select field to a formula and did all the same things, everything dependent on that is going to break, like completely just break. Your interfaces will no longer be filtered if you're filtering off of that field. If I were filtering off of this aging status column, like let's say I guess I can just really quickly say I could do contains too old. And then if I change this to that formula. I'm not going to add all the options. I'll just add to old. It's going to tell us when I hit save that I've got some dependencies off of that. And as soon as I confirm this change, my view is no longer filtered. Like that filter was just removed completely. And I still have an automation that's running to update this. So things are starting to do some weird stuff with my automations. But that filter was just completely removed. So what I've found to be easiest is to create a new field and then look at the dependencies for the old one and just repoint all the views and interfaces. Otherwise, you might end up with a big question mark around what exactly did break, because it's not super easy to deduce after you've made the change.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then if you go to the filter, if you now filter by your new formula field, it now treats it like a single select.
Exactly. So if I do this, now I've got all the same options for my new field here. Let me hide all these other ones so it's not confusing. But yeah, that's the number one thing is these filters are way easier to use because you don't need to remember what the formula value is going to be. You actually have a drop down of all of the options. And you can also set these colors so that if you're using these on a chart, like I did set up something briefly, and I'm going to point this actually at my new fields. Sorry, controls are in the way here. So now say I wanted this green to be something else other than that green. If I go here and change it to a blue and hit save, now all of my chart values that I've grouped by are also that same color. So if you're looking for greater control over colors on charts, that is a great option to be able to use one of these formula fields, and you can set the colors to whatever your heart desires, which I've really enjoyed.
And it's only single select. It doesn't support multi-select, correct?
Correct. Yes, because, and that makes sense because formulas can't return an array type right now. But yeah, very exciting stuff there. I'm very happy with this. I'm a little annoyed that it takes so long to implement, just because of if you've got something that's really intertwined and you've got lots of filters looking at it or interfaces looking at it, it does take quite a bit of effort to repoint and make sure that nothing breaks while you're taking advantage of this, but it'll save you time in the long run and also save automation runs, which is very nice.
Very cool. Yes, exciting to see that. And exciting to see how people use that as well. So thank you, Alli. And that concludes this season, episode 1, season 19. Silver, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Well, hopefully you can check out your app and use it and give you feedback. And we will see everybody next week in episode 2. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you for joining today's episode. We hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to check out our sponsor, OnToAir Backups, automated backups for Airtable. We'll see you next time on the BuiltOnAir podcast.